Trucker Dump, episode 143. Well, you can probably guess what today's podcast is all about, and unfortunately, it ain't fluffy kittens. Nope. For today's main topic, I'll be rebroadcasting an episode of the Payload Podcast, where JT talks to an epidemiologist about coronavirus and how it relates to us truckers. But before that, we've got lots of news on how it's affecting the trucking industry, including suspended enforced rules, how truckers are gaining new respect, and some clarification on the $2 trillion stimulus package. And of course, what you should do if you think you've got the virus. But hey, it's not all about corona. We've got an update on new hours of service rules, autonomous trucks, truck parking, and new high-tech maintenance ideas. Also, a major data breach and tips for being in an accident. In the feedback section, we'll talk about ignorant commenters, under 21 truckers, tailgating, and kitchen utensils. This episode of Trucker Dump is sponsored by Volvo Trucks and the Pilot Flying J app.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by abouttruckdriving.com. Resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey, trucker dumpers. How's it going out there? I trust you are well. I hope you have not gotten the coronavirus or anything like that, trampled by a moose or mauled by a possum or anything similar to that. Oh boy, I'm trying to make light of this situation because we all know there's some horrible stuff going on in the world right now. And this is going to be kind of a depressing episode in general. So just trying to make light of things while I can. Oh boy. So anyway, for those of you new to the show, my name is Todd McCann. I'll be your host. I am a 22-year trucker. I'm the author of 2 trucking ebooks. One is called Trucking Life, and the other is called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job. Find everything I do at abouttruckdriving.com. Like I said, the world seems to be going to hell in a handbasket, but I feel grateful for the situation I'm in, at least. My company has had some layoffs just as of yesterday when I'm recording this podcast, and I just barely escaped. I have 4 people underneath me, and all 4 of them got laid off. So I am now on that dreaded Kansas City bid that I spoke about in a few episodes ago. But I think it's going to work. I think we'll be fine. We got some money saved up, and I think we're going to be able to ride this thing out. And by the way, if you hear me sniffling a little bit, I don't have the coronavirus. Don't worry about it. All right. Well, like I said, this is going to be a busy episode because of, everything going on. So let's say we just jump straight into the news. Psych! I bet you thought we were going to start out with a corona story. Well, you are wrong. The Trucker Dump podcast would not be what it is today without recalls. Well, we've only got one at least. Got more things to worry about right now in the world. Anyway, PACCAR is recalling over 35,000 Peterbilts for a risk of fire. Apparently there's some possible shortage with the battery cables. And anyway, it says they expect that only 1% of the recalled vehicles are going to be actually need to have parts replaced on them, but they will do that for free. Again, all of the information will be in here, all the details. Basically, it's Peterbilt models 365, 389, 567, 579s between 2015 and 2020. So that is a lot. They're going to start this recall on May 1st, and they will contact you if you are one of the affected owners. So just be aware of that and go get that fixed if you get that call from them or that email or however they contact you. I don't own a truck, so I will never be contacted by a recall manufacturer on this. All right. Now that we got that quickie out of the way, let's get on with the real stuff that's happening. Now, I don't know if you've been made aware of this yet, but there is a thing in this world called the coronavirus, also known as COVID-19. I'm not going to go into all the gory details because, of course, I'm joking. Everyone's heard of this. It's infecting the entire world right now. According to Worldometers, check the link in the show notes for all these statistics coming up, there have been over 664,000 cases in the world and over 30,000 deaths, almost up to 31,000 deaths. And this is as of March 28th. These numbers continue to go up in almost every country. Some of the countries are actually going down there, like China, I believe is on its way down out of this thing because they were kind of the first to come along with this. But, just so you know, since this is U.S. based, I will quote some U.S. numbers here. We have 123,000 documented cases, a little over that here in the States, and we've had a little over 2,200 deaths. And that honestly is a bit more serious than I thought it was going to be. I have to admit, I was one of those people in the beginning that was like, this is being far overblown. And I do think there is part of this is being overblown, but I don't think it's necessarily the virus itself. I think it's just the hoarding, all of the attention towards it and the media and everything is just going berserko, and it's causing all this hoarding. And it seems to be that these numbers are worse than I've heard reports that like SARS and H1N1 back in the Obama era were not quite as bad, or were worse, but actually, you're looking at the numbers, I think they weren't quite as bad as this, and we are still not done with this. So it's probably going to get worse, unfortunately. But to put things into perspective, the U.S. has, for the documented number of cases, according to, and you compare that to the deaths that are involved, we're talking less than 2%. Now that's way more than the regular flu virus, but it's not near as high as countries like Italy. They are getting bombarded right now. I mean, they've got like 92,000 total cases and they've had over 10,000 deaths. That's like over 10%. Is it under 10%? Anyway, it's really close to 10%. And that is a big number. Actually, China's not even close to that. And they've got a huge population, and they were obviously the first place where it started all. China, quit eating all that weird stuff, and maybe we won't come down with all this. I saw a video online the other day of one of their open air markets, where you can go and buy meat and stuff like that. And they had dog and cat skewered out there. They had full rats that looked like they still had the fur on them and everything. And I guess people eat that kind of stuff. And all I can say is yuck. Anyway, please knock it off, Asia. We've had enough of your flu viruses. SARS, H1N1. I think all those started over there, didn't they? Anyway, I'll quit going off on the Asian people. So yes, this is a big deal. And of course, when you have something big like this, you've always got economic issues to go with it. Well, I got an article from Transport Topics here. That's ttnews.com. I'll be linking the show notes. It's called Multiple Hits to Economy Likely to Trigger Recession, analysis shows. And they're basically saying that, anytime you have two quarters that the GDP, which is, what's that stand for? Gross domestic product, something like that. Anyway, it's an economic indicator of how well a country is doing. But if you have two consecutive quarters of that in a row that are down, it's considered a recession. And they are expecting these next two quarters to be down. But from everything I've read, they do expect the next one after that to just go right back up to kind of normal. There's a few people who are, doom and glooming this thing completely out, like we're just going to go into a complete crash. But for the most part, people think we're going to come back kind of to the levels we were at before all this started. And hopefully trucking and everything will get back to normal. Now, I know trucking has had a surge recently with all the restocking of the shelves and things like that, but it has quickly kind of, as that's calmed down a little bit, that has kind of calmed down in certain sectors. So I guess the food industry is still going pretty mad and crazy. So if you need a trucking job, maybe you ought to hop over to some food company, somebody who hauls food. Or, somebody that supports the agriculture industry, something like that. My kind of company, these LTLs, a lot of these don't really support that kind of stuff very much. I wish they did at this time because we probably wouldn't be having layoffs, but it is what it is. And, I make enough money that I'll make it up the rest of the year, as long as things come back the way people think it will. But, I have high hopes because this thing started in late January in China, and there's a report here on transport topics that is, of course, link in the show notes, talks about China ramping up their economy again. So things are already kind of swinging around on them and kind of back on the uprise a little bit. I know their corona deaths have, I don't know, I think they've actually dropped. I don't think they're just leveling off, but I think they're actually decreasing in the number of cases that are reported are less and less. So they're kind of on the downfall. I think I've heard some predictions that they expect the coronavirus to be kind of peak here in the States in May. I hope it's before that, but if not, well, it's a couple of months, bad, and hopefully we'll get back on our feet. But anyway, China seems to be coming out of this thing. So hopefully it won't be very, long lived. Although, as the evil overlord did point out to me, that China is not always exactly forthcoming with this stuff. So perhaps they could be fudging the numbers a bit. We just don't know, do we? Again, there's a link in the show notes to this article if you're interested in it. Kind of a boring article, but just the thesis of the whole thing, us coming out of it, is kind of what I wanted to point to. But of course, this thing is affecting us still. So as you have probably heard, the Senate has okayed a historic $2.2 trillion corona rescue package. This again is on ttnews.com. This is basically a massive, massive bill. They said this thing was 880 pages. Man, it's supposed to be the big one, biggest one ever. Unprecedented, they said. It's going to add it's going to double our national deficit. So that ain't cool. But, got to keep our economy going, got to keep workers going, got to keep businesses afloat. And that's kind of what this is for. It's supporting all kinds of different businesses as far as, them being able to keep their payrolls going, paying people to be off work and sick and stuff like that. And of course, there's this unemployment thing that they have kicked in. Now, the way this thing is supposed to work, well, let's just point you to a Forbes article, and there'll be a link in the show notes to this. It's called All You Wanted to Know About Those Tax Stimulus Checks, But We're Afraid to Ask. Well, basically, I don't think these stimulus checks have actually been completely approved yet. I'm pretty sure the House is still working on this, but it's expected to pass any day now. Could be passed by the time you're hearing this, probably will be. And they said they're going to jump right on this, and they are going to deposit these checks through direct deposit. If you filed a tax return last year and they have your information, your banking information already, if you use direct deposit for your tax stuff for anywhere in 2018 or 2019 taxes, they're just going to direct it right into your account. And if not, they'll mail you a check. There's all kinds of ifs, ands, or buts on this thing, so you might want to check out this article. It's very, very informative. I'll give you the highlights though. If you are a single adult and you make less than $75,000 per year, you will get $1,200. And if you are a married couple filing jointly, you will get $2,400 if you make less than $150,000 per year. In addition, you also get an extra $500 per child. So, hey, we didn't have kids. Well, we're out $500, I guess. Oh, well, I'm sure we saved far more than $500 by not having kids. Not disappointed with that. Also, there is, let's see. Also, if you file for head of household and you earn less than $75,000, you will also get the $2,400. At least that's the way I understand it. Check out the link in the show notes for all this stuff. Oh, and I should point out that these stimulus checks, if you don't meet those guidelines of $75,000 or $150,000, don't worry about that too much. They are going to do a prorate thing. So if you make over $75,000 as a solo, but less than $99,000, they will prorate that in there. So you might not get the whole $1,200, but you might get, $900 or something like that. So anyway, you're not completely left out unless, of course, you're a solo, a single person who makes over $99,000 a year. And in that case, I would hope you'd be okay without, a $1,200 check. Hopefully you're set up well enough. I mean, you don't have a wife or a husband, right? You should be doing well in the financials part of that. All right. Anyway. Now, one rumor I heard about that didn't make sense to me is there's something called, they're calling this a refundable tax credit. And I didn't really understand it. And to be honest with you, I still don't, even after reading this article. But basically, the fear was that this was an advance on your income tax return. They're saying that's in essence what it is, but it will not affect your income tax refund for next year if you get one, or your bill if you end up paying every year. Again, I don't know how they can say it's like an advance on your refund, but it doesn't affect your refund. I don't get that. That's why I said I don't get it. So anyway, if you understand this, send me an email, truckerdump@gmail.com. Maybe you can explain it to me. But anyway, just know that this is free money, so to speak. Well, nothing's free in life. We know that. Why did I even say that? Especially when it comes to the government. Nothing's free. They'll get it out of us one way or another. But anyway, they are helping people through these hard times. And I guess that's an important thing to do, especially because, and these stimulus checks, that is only part of this plan. They also have in store that if you are unemployed because of the coronavirus, like, the 4 people who were laid off underneath me, they will be getting the unemployment checks. And basically what they're doing is whatever your state normally pays, say it's $300 a week, they are going to go ahead and add on $600 a week. So there are instances where you could actually be laid off or unemployed at the moment and actually bring home more than you normally do. I know that sounds weird, but it is. And I just hope people don't abuse that, because you know what? This is taxpayer money after all. And speaking of taxes, I would like to add that these stimulus checks, back to the stimulus checks, these are tax-free from the way I understand it. According to this Forbes article, it looks like these are not taxable income. I think you will have to report how much you got from the government on your 2020 taxes, but that's only to compare what they actually thought they give you and what you actually got, just so they can make sure you got the right amount. Supposedly they're saying if they short you or if they paid you too much, you won't have to pay it back. But if, they paid you too little, they will give you some more, I guess on your, probably add it to your tax refund. I don't know how they're going to do that. But anyway, like I said, this may all sound like rambling mess to you. So just go to the Forbes article, and it is all laid out in a question and answer format. It's a really good article. Give you everything you need to know. All right, moving on. Let's take a look at how this coronavirus is actually affecting some of the trucking industry. If you have not heard yet, the U.S. Department of Transportation has declared an emergency situation for commercial vehicles in response to this coronavirus outbreak, and they are lifting some of the rules, basically the hours of service rules, but only if you are going to haul certain kinds of equipment. So for instance, the categories they have here are medical supplies and equipment related to the testing, diagnostic, and treatment of COVID-19. Or if you're hauling supplies or equipment necessary for safety, like prevention of the disease, like masks and gloves, hand sanitizer, soaps, disinfectants, all that kind of stuff. Also, we all know there's a shortage of toilet paper in this world. So if you're hauling toilet paper, thank you very much. We appreciate it. But, food, paper products, other groceries, that kind of stuff. If you're in the grocery industry, pretty much you're exempt and you can just run to death. We'll talk about that in a minute, what that suspension of the hours of service really means. Let's go on though here. Also, all of the raw materials that are used to make all these products, such as paper, plastic, or alcohol, to make the food and the paper products and groceries, stuff like that, all that kind of stuff is exempt also. And of course, can't do any of this trucking stuff without fuel, so fuel is exempt. And of course, we need to contain this virus. So any equipment supplies, and persons necessary to establish and manage temporary housing or quarantine situations. That's supported. And of course, all the people necessary to provide all this stuff, such as federal, state, or local authorities for medical isolation or quarantine stuff, or just for general medical or emergency services. If you're hauling those type of people, you do not have to abide by the hours of service. All right. Now, when I read this on the FMCSA website, link in the show notes to this article, I had questions because in one of the articles I read, it says nominal amounts of any of these items on your load does not qualify as an emergency load, especially if it's just put on there too, so you can claim that you don't have to run under the hours of service. So for instance, if you've got a load of steel, but you put one load of paper towels or toilet paper on there and say, well, this is an emergency load. No, it's really not. So they did put a stipulation in there for that. But my question was, who decides this stuff? What is a nominal amount? I mean, is 4 pallets of that stuff enough? Is 6? Is 2? What is the number? We don't know. They left it very vague. And so I was looking up, trying to find some information on this, and I actually found some information on a really good source. And believe it or not, it is the FMCSA website again. And there is a frequently asked questions about this. And it covers a lot of this stuff, like, do you have to take a 30-minute break? No, you don't. Do you have to worry about the 70-hour rule and stuff like that? No, you don't. You don't have to worry about the 11 or the 14. All of these rules are exempt as long as you are hauling this type of equipment. But as soon as you deliver that load, you do have to get 10 hours, a legal 10-hour break. But this article, I'm not going to go into all the gory details here, but if you are going to be hauling this kind of a load, again, I don't even know how that's decided. It looks like to me, according to this article, that it's kind of up to the driver to decide. And basically, if you think it's an emergency load, you need to be able to prove that later on. Now, if I was an owner operator, I'd be very careful about that, because if this comes back on you, you're supposed to save all your bill of ladings and stuff like that. And you're going to have to justify, if you've got 4 pallets of toilet paper, on your load of, whatever toys that aren't necessary, then you're going to have to justify that. Now, again, I don't know how closely they're going to be looking at everybody who's doing this. Probably not very closely at all, but I would not want to be in that predicament. And if you work for a company, I would leave that decision up to them, because we all know this stuff all rolls downhill and it all rolls right down on the trucker. And I would not want them to say, well, you decide, and then you're out there, you get caught, and they say, well, this doesn't qualify as emergency. And then you're up a creek without a paddle because you've just driven 15 or 16 hours. And we don't want that. Now, let me give you a brief anecdotal thing here. My friend driver Chris Mack was telling me the other day he had picked up a load of barbecue sauce. And there is wording in this rules exemption that says that, basically anything going to restock distribution centers, things like that. So he was thinking, hey, maybe I'm exempt on this. But his company decided that barbecue sauce was not essential. Now, Chris argued that, hey, maybe it is in Texas or Memphis or someplace like that where barbecue is really popular. Maybe that is essential. But obviously I'm joking about this. But, like I said, this is the vagueness of this whole thing. Chris thought, well, it's going to a distribution center. I'm exempt. The company said, no, I'd go with the company on this one. So anyway, this article goes into a lot of other information. There's stuff on how would you log this now that we have e-logs, all that kind of stuff. Not going to go into all those details because not every one of us is hauling this kind of stuff. I'd be interested to see what the percentage of truckers who are actually breaking these rules for breaking the hours of service to do this kind of stuff. If you are, and you have more details on this that I don't, that could help me understand it, please send me an email at truckerdump@gmail.com. I am a very analytical person and I don't like vagueness. I want to know what the rules are. And they left this completely wide open. It's bugging the living crap out of me, quite honestly. So please help me out here. All right. Well, what else are they doing to help the trucking industry? Well, all kinds of things, actually. There are states out there. I found this article on Transport Topics, link in the show notes. There are states out here who have lifted the maximum weight limits on trucks. But again, this is only for loads that qualify as emergency services. So I'm not really sure how that works. Maybe it'd be like bottled water, because that's pretty heavy. You get some of those loads and it could be, 46,000 pounds. I guess you could go over that and get away with it. Again, check out the link in the show notes for all this stuff. It looks like Mississippi, Iowa, let's see, Georgia, Virginia, Maryland, who else? North Carolina, Nebraska, Illinois, Missouri. Lots of people are, and there's probably going to be even more added onto this later, but they're just going to get rid of, these weight rules, which again, I don't quite understand. I mean, I get why we need to do this for an emergency situation, that we need to get these supplies here, but I don't understand why it's safe to do that, but only during an emergency situation. But it's not safe to do that when it's not an emergency situation. Either you're safe or you're not safe, right? I mean, if their guidelines say you're not safe after 11 rules, why all of a sudden is that lifted? I've never understood that. But hey, I guess I won't complain because I'll get toilet paper faster. And everybody wants that, right? I don't have a bidet, but I'm thinking about getting one. Actually, I'll probably just go the redneck route by, getting one of those sprayers that go on your sink, on your kitchen sink, and, putting a T-line into my toilet bowl line. Just going that way. Ugh, who's a redneck? Dear God, I must be delirious. But hey, that isn't all the government is doing for us truck drivers. The FMCSA has demanded that all truck stops must stay open 24 hours a day to keep these truckers rolling. We got to have fuel. We got to have food and, repair services, all that kind of stuff. And we need, of course, a place to rest. I saw a article where, Pennsylvania had shut down all of their rest areas, and boy, that got a bunch of hate going on there, because it's like, oh, you want our stuff, you want the truckers to bring the stuff in, but you don't want to give us any place to rest. Well, they lifted that pretty quick and they reopened some of those places. So good on them. Of course, once again, didn't we just report that something about Pennsylvania? They had lots of complaints about their tolls being raised, and then they got sued for it. And now all of a sudden they're concerned about it and think it's a problem, but only after getting sued. Yeah, kind of the same thing. Yeah, that's a way to be reactionary there, Pennsylvania. Unbelievable. Anyway, as you probably know, if you've been out here on the road at all, the truck stops are getting kind of crazy with the things they're doing. We've seen in some states that Love's, Pilot, stuff like that, they are roping off the coffee area, and they are, if you want, they actually close the roller grills in a lot of these places for a while. And, can't reach in there and get donuts or anything like that. Pretty much anything that's self-serve, they are not letting you touch. Some states are still doing it. Others are, like I say, they got a cashier back there, basically just, getting all that for you, So if you, want some coffee, you tell them what size, you tell them what kind, they go pour it. And if you need to add your foo-foo stuff in it, like I always do, you got to add the creamer, you got to tell them how much to put in there. And, basically, you're probably not going to get your coffee the way you like it unless you just order it black. I can't do that. Not man enough. Sorry. It is what it is. I need my foo-foo coffee. Marshmallows? Yes, please. I'm guessing I just lost half the listeners. All right, let's move on. There is yet one more way that they are helping truckers. The government has decided to extend your CDL license and your medical certificates, your DOT physicals and all that stuff until June 30th. That is, if your license expires or your DOT physical expires on or after March 1st, of course, all these places are not working anymore. Like you can't go to a DMV and get that stuff renewed. So they are giving us an extension on that to up to 90 days. So I think they said until June 30th. So if your license is actually expired, the cops won't do anything to you if they look at it, as long as it's not past June 30th. So that's a cool thing. But do go and get it taken care of right afterwards because, well, it's not good to not have a CDL and to be driving a truck. Now, moving on, this next article was of particular interest to me because, like I said, I will be doing this Kansas City bid, which means I will be unloading freight for about 2 hours every night. Most of it is just forklift work, but you do have to fingerprint some stuff. And this basically is an article that says risk remains low for coronavirus transmission on packages. So I was grateful to see this. Basically what it's saying is that, on the Harvard Health Publishing website, they had discovered that the coronavirus can survive up to 24 hours on cardboard. That's longer than the 2 or 3 hours it can survive on droplets in the air, but significantly less than the 2 or 3 days it can survive on plastic or stainless steel. So that's good to know, that like if, our freight has been sitting on that trailer for over 24 hours or close to it, I am probably going to be fine by touching it. That's a good thing, provided it's not plastic or stainless steel. Don't handle a lot of stainless steel, probably handle some plastics and stuff like that. Anyway, let's just hope for the best. I'm just going to try to do the best I can and, wear gloves and, just try to keep my social distancing. Is that the correct term now? Yeah. Wow. I was thinking the other day with my nephews always playing video games, just sitting in their rooms alone. They'll be online together, but they'll be in 3 separate rooms. It's bizarre. But anyway, I was thinking, you know what? These kids today, they've already got the social distancing down pat. They never get within 6 feet of another human being, no matter what. Well, good for them. Let's move on. Man, it seems like I'm really cooking through these. It is a lot of articles, and we're not even through the corona stuff yet, so let's keep on moving. So this next article from overdriveonline.com, link in the show notes, is good. And if you start getting the sniffles, if you start getting a fever, and you're wondering what you can do about it. This article is called Step by Step, What You Can Do If You Suspect COVID-19 Symptoms on the Road. And this really is a step-by-step guide. Just lay it out for you. And one of the things it mentions in here is the telemedicine stuff. And I've included another link from, who is that from? It's also from overdriveonline.com. And it's called Options on the Road for a Speedy Coronavirus Consult. And that is, they put a coronavirus spin on it, but it's really what this article is kind of like an advertisement for the benefits of having a telemedicine option, like on your insurance or whatever. It's a really good thing for truckers, to not have to try to make it to a doctor somewhere. If you got, these services like Teledoc or Urgent Care Travel or National Association of Independent Truckers also have a mobile app called 24-Hour Doctor, things like that. I believe OIDA has one now too. Can't remember the name of that one, but it's in one of these articles. So anyway, if you suspect you might have the coronavirus, don't do like some people and just walk into a clinic and say, "Hey, everyone, I think I got the corona." Well, they won't want to attack you to the ground at least because, who wants your cooties? But, this will walk you through the steps on what to do and how to do it properly and, get some care for yourself without giving everybody else your cooties. Anyway, this is a valuable resource. I think if I were you, I think I would, bookmark, go to this link and make a home screen icon out of it on your phone or something like that. So you have it handy in case you come down with the old Corona. And I don't mean drinking the Coronas. That's okay, as far as I know. Although there are a lot of stupid people out here, I hear Corona beer sales have gone down about 30%. So what's that tell you about the stupidity of Americans? Wow. Coronavirus? Can't drink Corona. Durr. Wow. But next up, there is something good coming from all of this. Well, kinda. Truckers are actually being appreciated again. Isn't that funny? Now, when they realize, that their store shelves are completely blank, within just a day or two, they think, oh, maybe truckers are kind of important. Well, I've included a couple links in the show notes here, both of them on transport topics. Now, one of them is just kind of it's called Showers of Praise, Greet Busy Truckers, talking about some of the things people have done, like setting up an arrest area and, giving free food to truckers and things like that. And the other one is called How America is Thanking Truckers During the Coronavirus Crisis. And it's kind of just a feel good thing. Lots of like tweets of people who are, would just show up at a rest area or whatever and give, like a random family would just bring a trucker or something, some food or a snack bag or whatever, and just say thanks, bringing their kids and stuff like that. It's really nice to see, because we've not been respected for quite a while. Truckers play such a vital role in our economy. Without us, man, things just come to a screeching halt, as they can tell. We just couldn't keep up with capacity when everybody went into horde mode. So now they're actually appreciating it. It's sad we have to go through something like this to get that kind of recognition. I mean, back in the 70s, truckers were cool. We were respected, but somewhere over the line that changed, and we're not anymore. We're just in their way, in the general public's way. And not until something like this happens, do we get some recognition. But it's nice. I'll take it any way I can get it, at least. And of course, it's not just the general public doing, helping. Restaurants are starting to, kind of cater to truckers, since we are having a hard time getting food. A lot of places are staying open just for carry out. But I went into a Arby's the other night inside a Pilot that it's normally open 24 hours a day, and there's hardly anybody in there late at night, sitting down to eat. They just usually grab food to go, but for some reason it was closed. I didn't really see why that was, but hey, it was what it was. And, dadgummit, I didn't get my Arby's, and I wasn't very happy about it, but that's happening everywhere. So, there are restaurants that are doing stuff, like welcoming truckers, putting big signs out. Like McDonald's has this thing where you can order through the McDonald's app, and you can just park along the shoulder or wherever you can get close to the building, and you can walk up to the pullover area. I can't remember what they call it, but there's a little pullover area if they don't have your drive-through food yet. And there's supposedly some kind of little number pad on there, and the app that you ordered through will give you the number, and you can type it in there, and you could just you've walked over there, and you can just stand there and they'll bring your food out. And of course, Texas Roadhouse put out a big blast recently, on the internet saying, hey, truckers, you're welcome here. Just pull those big old rigs right into our parking lots, and we'll bring the food out to you if you order in advance and stuff like that. It's nice to see. Of course, the reason Texas Roadhouse can do this is because nobody else is in their parking lots, because they aren't allowed to eat inside. So, once again, it's kind of a mixed bag. They're doing this to get business, but they're also helping us in the process. So, hey, I guess we should just take advantage of it while we can. Other companies are doing similar stuff, like, Chick-fil-A is bringing food out to you in certain places. I saw someplace in Arkansas, they had a vacant lot next to a Sonic, and they set up an impromptu Sonic drive-through for truckers. So they'll just come out, walk up on some metal stairs and take your order, and then bring your food out to you when it's done. So it's just kind of neat, because it is really getting hard to be a trucker out here, and to get the services that we need and taken care of. So thank you to those companies that are bending over backwards, even though I wish you had done it all along. But, well, why cater to truckers when you can cater to the rest of everybody else? Man, am I Debbie Downer today or what? All right, let's move on. There is some more good news coming out of all this Corona stuff. You remember that big CVSA road check that they do every year in June? Well, they had bumped it up to May, but now it has been postponed. So just postponed, notice not canceled. They do say it will be rescheduled for later on. Don't know when yet, but as soon as they know, probably as soon as it's all get cleared up, they will get right back at it. And if you remember right, they were going to be looking at driver qualifications, driver requirements, very closely this year. Make sure your license was up to date, your your DOT card's up to date, that you could prove you had vehicle registration and insurance and all that stuff. Checking your seatbelt, that kind of thing, checking your logbooks, of course. So they will get around to that eventually. Now that I say that, that might be a really good reason not to fudge these emergency loads too much. Don't risk too much because they're going to be checking those logs later on. They did, however, point out that Operation Safe Driver Week, which is scheduled for July 12th through 18th, and Brake Safety Week is still set for August 23rd through the 29th. Of course, if this thing drags on, they will probably delay those things too. But, for now, those are still going, but at least we've escaped the CVSA one for now. It's coming. Don't get too lax. And speaking of that, I heard that Goodyear, I don't have the link to this article, but I heard that Goodyear is actually giving free DOT inspections. So if you want to get ready for that, you might want to run in there and have them take a look at your rig. I could find that link for you, but I just told you, so I don't really need to, and I'm just too lazy to do it. So it's late in the morning. I'm ready for bed. Hey, I'd like to break in here for a second to give you a word from our sponsor, Volvo Trucks. Learn more at volvotrucks.us. These are trying times. Volvo Trucks would like to make sure all you truckers know how much they appreciate you doing the job to keep this country and the world rolling. This job is stressful enough as is, and this virus thing certainly isn't helping anything. I know personally I've been stressed more than I thought. I'm normally a pretty chillax dude. Yeah, but I found myself snapping at the evil overlord, some of the guys I work with, when I normally would just let things roll off my back. And I figured out that this is stressing me out a bit more than I thought. Well, this all ties back to Volvo Trucks because they are all about driver comfort. And when a driver is comfortable and they're relaxed and they're less stressed, they're a safer driver. And Volvo Dynamic Steering is designed to make your job just a little easier. The strain on your back, neck, arms, and shoulders is reduced because steering requires less effort. It compensates for side winds, removes road vibrations, and makes backing simpler thanks to the automatic return to center. You got to go over to volvotrucks.us and watch some of these videos, or check them out on YouTube. That automatic return to center thing is funky. It's like nothing you've ever seen or driven. Check out Volvo Dynamic Steering and enjoy driving again. And thanks to all you truckers who continue to do your job through all this mess. You can learn more about Volvo and Volvo Dynamic Steering at volvotrucks.us. And hey, Volvo, thank you for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump. I appreciate it. All right, now you might think with all that Corona news that we'd be done. Well, we're not. We got some stories to go here that are, hey, thankfully not related to Corona. First off, on overdriveonline.com, link in the show notes, the TSA is allowing the TWIC card to satisfy hazmat endorsement requirements. Yay! So now basically what they're saying, if you get the TWIC card, which truckers will get to get in and out of ports faster, if you have that, you have to go through all the same, background checks and fingerprinting and all that stuff. So they're saying finally that it's kind of stupid to have to do it for that and then turn around and do it for hazmat also. So if you have a TWIC card, you will automatically, that will work for your hazmat too. It will qualify you to haul hazmat. Now, The article does not say that is the reverse is true, because hauling hazmat and going into the ports is two separate things. So just so you're aware of that. If you want more information on it, it's a really quick, short article. Check it out. Link in the show notes. You know, at the beginning of this episode, I pointed out that this was going to be kind of a depressing episode. Well, there is some actual good stories coming out of this, though. The truckersreport.com has an article called Final Trucking Hours of Service Rule Sent to the White House for Approval. Apparently, Jim Mullen, who is the FMCSA's acting administrator, he put out that he submitted these final rules on March 2nd to the White House. So they just have to kind of review them, go over them, and if they approve of them, they will get those out pretty quick. That's a good thing. If you remember what this is all about, this is the thing where they want to get rid of the mandatory 30-minute rest break. They want, or alter it a little bit. Maybe, like make some on-duty time count towards it. Anything that isn't driving would count towards a rest break, which would be great. Allowing, either an 8 and a 2 or a 7 and 3 split sleeper berth, and instituting that on-duty pause, that 14-hour pause button that would let you go up to 17 if you were delayed by 3 hours somewhere along the line. They said there were over 8,000 comments submitted on this. I was one of them. I hope you were too. Hopefully they took our input into account on this and before they submitted it. So it'll be interesting to see what this comes out. But quite honestly, no matter what they come out with, even if it's not exactly what we want, I think it's going to be better overall because it just gives us more options. They said they were focusing on giving us more flexibility, and pretty much every one of these rules that they implemented will add more flexibility. Now, there is some issues with that flexibility, like that 14-hour pause. Are we, the trucker, going to be able to decide that, or can our carrier force that on us? They really need to make that clear. And honestly, the answer needs to be the trucker's decision, or else every trucking company is going to want you to use the extra 3 hours that you burned so you can actually work 17 hours that day. And quite frankly, there's a lot of truckers don't really want to work 17 hours a day. Can't say as a blame them. But anyway, they say after they submitted this, they are hoping and they're kind of expecting that the final rule will be published by the FMCSA in the early part of 2020. So that could be any time. It is the early part of 2020. I wish they'd be a little, like I said, I hate vagueness. What's this early part of 2020 crap? Come on, tell us. Is it going to be March? Is it going to be April? Is it going to be May? What's the early part? I guess anywhere before, I don't know, June, July. Half the year. What's half the year? July? I don't know. June 30th. June 30th. Yeah, that'd be half the year. So I guess anything before June 30th could technically be considered the early part of the 2020. You see how technical I am? I don't know how the evil overlord has lived with me for this long. All right, let's move on to another good story. Wow, a bunch of them right in a row. We mentioned earlier what a pain in the butt it was to find truck parking, right? Well, truckersreport.com has an article. Truck parking bill could mean $755 million for new free truck parking. Free is all capitalized. Thank God for that. Basically, there was a bipartisan bill sponsored by Mike Bost, a Republican out of Illinois, and Angie Craig, a Democrat out of Minnesota. This was called the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act, and they are trying to put, like I said, $755 million over the next 5 years to create new parking spaces only for commercial trucks. These could be built from scratch. They could be used to expand or convert existing way stations and rest stops. They can be, and this is not like the federal government deciding, the way the article puts it. It's not like these are all federally things that they're setting up. It's going to be like a grant type situation where if a truck stop wants to add on, a bunch of spots to their truck stop, they could feasibly go to the government and say, hey, we want to add on, 100 spots to our truck stop, and they would be either approved or denied. Same thing with like parking areas, like rest areas and things like that. Although those are state run, so the states would be applying for those grants to do it. It's not a federal thing. But either way, the cool thing about this is this money has been earmarked for truck parking only. Now, we know a lot of the transportation stuff that the government gets, out of us, like fuel taxes, road taxes, stuff like that, is supposed to go towards maintaining the roads, parking, infrastructure, stuff like that, but it often gets shipped off somewhere else. So let's hope them earmarking this for this one particular thing and nothing else. They finally realize there is a problem with truck parking in America and they need to fix it. And it looks like this is a good step towards it. So hopefully that will go through. God knows, it's going to be a long road ahead. The article even says it's a long road ahead for more safe truck parking, though. Before the money can be released, the bill will have to go through the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, the House, the Senate, and finally the President. So don't expect any new parking spaces real quick, but at least they're coming down the road. Hopefully. It does say a good thing that it is a bipartisan thing, that both parties actually realize we need this. And hopefully with all this coronavirus thing, this will emphasize it even more. We'll be more in the spotlight, more in the headlines, and hopefully they will take that into consideration. And, now that the public is starting to appreciate us a little bit, maybe they will want to make their constituents happy by appreciating us also. Whatever works, as long as we get more parking out of it. All right, next up, well, like I said, we can't have a episode without a recall. Well, actually, we did a few episodes without recalls, but we hardly ever do one without some sort of automation thing. Well, I got 3 articles here. The first is on freightwaves.com, link in the show notes. A company called Starsky Robotics says they are ending their remote truck experiment. And what they were really working on is, remote is not automated. Remote means a truck driver is sitting in a room somewhere with a steering wheel and computer screens, and he is actually guiding a full-size loaded semi down the road, basically like a video game. And that was what they were working on, but they said investment had dried up. They couldn't get funding anymore, so they shut down their operations. So that's good, right? We don't have to worry about automated trucking anymore, right? If only. Nope. Let's go over to transport topics. That's ttnews.com. And there is an autonomous tech company called Locomation that has signed a deal with Wilson Logistics. Now, they are based out of Springfield, Missouri, close to my house, and they are going to partner on this thing. And basically what it is the old platooning thing. Do you remember when that was the big thing? They were saying, well, if one truck is being controlled by a driver in the front and then another truck is really close to it behind it, eventually it won't have to have a driver. They can link those two together by the computers, and whatever the driver does in the first one, like the second he hits the brake, then the back one will do the same thing, and they will be able to reduce fuel costs. Well, I can't remember what company it was, but they actually got out of it. Seems like it might have been Volvo. Maybe it wasn't Volvo. I don't remember. It was somebody, and they were doing a lot of testing on this, and they said that the fuel savings were just not enough to make up a difference. Sounds like those trailer skirts and trailer tails and all that stuff, they don't seem to quite work as well as everybody hoped they would. But anyway, they are going to be pursuing this platooning thing. So they say this is a 36-month pilot program. They said there will be a trucker in the second vehicle. Now, again, I said this before, I would not want to be a trucker in the second vehicle because they're talking about these trucks will only be separated by 25 feet. So, I mean, I'm assuming a company like Wilson Logistics probably has 65 mile an hour trucks. Now, I'm going 65 mile an hour behind another truck, and I'm only 25 feet from their bumper. Man, you better be paying me some hazard pay because I'm dead. If that computer system doesn't work, I'm a goner. I'm squished. There's no getting around it. It's going to take a brave individual to ride in that back, but hey, somebody will do it. Lots of stupid people out here. Anyway, Wilson Logistics does operate in 48 states and Canada, but for this pilot, they're only going to be operating in the Western U.S., which makes a lot of sense. Lots of open road out there. So they're going to be doing that. They are very ambitious about this program, though. They say they hope to expand the program to more than 2,000 autonomous trucks operating on more than 68 routes. Well, I don't know. We'll see how this goes. Personally, I hope the fuel savings don't pan out because I don't think this platooning thing is a viable option. It doesn't seem safe to me at all. And, look at all the ire I've gotten from my tailgating episode. Imagine now if we've got truckers tailgating each other like that and what the public is going to perceive. Although maybe they don't care if that one trucker is tailgating another because they don't really care if we die. Well, now they do because they need us for toilet paper. But other than that, anyway, let's move on to another article from TT News, link in the show notes. This is a company called Too Simple. They are expanding their autonomous trucking program with UPS. Apparently, they were already doing some stuff, but they're going to up it to 20 trips a week and adding some different routes in here also. I guess they were just doing it on one particular route out between Phoenix and Tucson, Arizona. And it's going to be going between Phoenix and El Paso now to do some more testing on this. Now, this is a truly autonomous thing here where the truck is doing most of the driving, and they're saying they are seeing a 10% fuel reduction compared to a human driven truck. Now, I don't know if I can buy 10%, but maybe one of you owner operators could tell me. If you're an owner operator, send me an email, truckerdump@gmail.com. Do you think that's the case? I mean, I know as a company driver, I'm not all that great with fuel. I just, I gas on it and go, and I don't have to worry about it too much. But that computer is all about the efficiency, is all about progressive shifting. It doesn't matter how slow it goes off the line. It doesn't care. It's just trying to save fuel. So could it save 10%? I don't know. You tell me. They say it can, and I guess we'll see. If it does save that much, darn sure they are going to go through this program because every company out there would love to save 10% on their fuel costs. So like I said, one company goes down the tubes, but two others are still hammered down on this autonomous driving thing. I thought it was supposed to be 2 steps forward and 1 step back, not 1 step forward and 2 steps back. All right, let's go to some more technology stuff and how to save some money. Found this one on Transport Topics. Man, they're turned out to be a valuable resource. Glad I hooked up with their email, their newsletter. This one is about smart tire technology. Link in the show notes. Basically, there's some tires out there that you can get that have little sensors on the inside of them. I guess there's numerous of them and are kind of embedded in the rubber. And what this is doing is it is looking at the tread, like when it's rolling, it is able to tell somehow if there are like bubbles forming, if a tire is about ready to have a blowout. I don't know how it's doing. It seems magical to me. But the whole purpose of these things is they're saying that it will help tire-related costs for fleets, increasing the uptime because you're not going to be having blowouts. Like if it can register, like if the tread is getting low on the tire and they can get you into a shop and get that changed before it blows. Or, like I said, if something if it senses a blowout somehow, it is going to let them know ahead of time. I don't know how it works. It's magic. I'm pretty sure Dumbledore's involved, but I'm just really not sure. It sounds pretty cool though. I can imagine what these tires cost though. And it doesn't say anywhere in this article how much the tire is. It kind of reminds me of the old, when Tesla was well, Tesla still is building their semi, but they didn't mention the price on it for quite a while. And once the price finally came out, well, you figured out why, because nobody can afford it. It's a nice experiment, but nobody can afford to run them on a daily basis. Anyway, if you're interested in this smart tire technology, check out the link in the show notes. All right. Well, there must be something about getting a jump on these mechanical problems, because this next article is on ttnews.com, transport topics, link in the show notes. This one's called Fleets Move Towards Predictive Maintenance to Prevent Breakdowns and Reduce Expenses. Basically, what this system is doing is it is monitoring like your fault codes and when things go wrong with the truck and it breaks down. These computers nowadays can tell you almost anything. If you have a modern truck, a lot of times it will warn you, give you a light on your dash that says you've got a light out. And a lot of times it will even tell you your left high beam headlight is out. That's like, cool. I mean, that's a neat feature to have. So basically what it's doing is these systems are keeping track of all of the maintenance issues that they have, all of the breakdowns they have, and they are trying to predict by the past data what is going to happen. So like if they start figuring out that they are having blowouts on their tires at the 80,000 mile mark or whatever, I don't know, truck tires, obviously. So maybe that's not high mileage at all. I don't know. But anyway, for the sake of argument, let's say they figured out that, most tires were starting to get really low and blow out at 80,000. Well, they could change their maintenance, preventative maintenance program to where they were changing out their tires before that. That would save all the cost on the road, for, trucks being called out to fix tires on the side of the road, or it could, keep them from having to, limp into truck stops to get them fixed, which is a danger in itself because now you're flipping rubber all over the road, that kind of a thing. And, it could even be like they use for an example, like if they start figuring out that they're having battery problems at a certain time, however, the batteries are getting a certain age and they start having more jump starts, and they need to call out vehicles to jump start a truck. Well, they know at that point, well, let's just start changing out the batteries before that actually happens. It's a neat concept. I would love to see it go into play because if nothing else, it would just mean that we're getting more preventative maintenance. And especially at a company like mine, which for preventative maintenance is pretty much non-existent. We react to the problem after it happens. But yeah, I'd love to see this on the fleets. I think it would be a great thing. Anyway, check out, it's a pretty long article. It's pretty in detail. If you own a small fleet, you might want to check this out, or a big fleet, or heck, even, I don't know if this would be feasible for, money wise for a one-time owner operator, a one owner, truck. What am I trying to say? One truck owner. Oh boy. Yeah, but check this link in the show notes and, see if this might interest you. It's pretty cool. Two more to finish up. Well, Overdrive Online is back at it doing their trucking law series. This is a good one. When trying to help at an accident scene can hurt you instead. Basically, the gist of this article is don't get too cocky just because, say you have an accident and you don't perceive it to be your fault. Well, don't just go in, with trying to just give all the information, because you're going to be in the clear. Because a lot of times these things will come back on you regardless. I've been plenty of drivers who've been out there in a situation say, oh, we'll just let this slide. And then next thing you know, they're getting, called and saying, hey, why didn't you report this or whatever, that kind of a situation. So this article is just a brief article. It's from Brad Klepper, is the president of Interstate Trucker, which is a law firm dedicated to defending drivers. He's also the president of the Discount Services Driver's Legal Plan. You can reach him at 800-333-3748 if you got any questions, or you can check out interstatetrucker.com or driverslegalplan.com. Again, that phone number is 800 333-3748. So you might want to read this one before you get into an accident. It's probably not a good thing to be pulling up while you're sitting on the side of the road in the middle of an accident. I don't usually like to end a news segment with bad news, but hey, that's just the way it fell. So here goes. Unfortunately, there was a data breach. I don't know if you heard about this. This was actually quite a while ago. It was February 27th is when this was released. So anyway, if you've had any dealings with a company called Total Quality Logistics, or TQL, it is one of the nation's largest freight brokerage. If you have had any contact with them whatsoever, you have an account with them, you might want to figure something out here, because they had a data breach. Hackers got in and they got some of the account information. They got like your tax ID, and a lot of them got your bank account numbers. So that is really not a good thing. Now, they did say that if you're a carrier and you were notified by email by TQL, that they know for sure that some of your information was compromised. So they've been doing everything in their power to stop this, but the thing they're recommended is, just as a precaution, they recommend that all carriers contact the bank that is associated with their TQL account and make sure they know what's going on, and get a fraud alert on there, or change bank accounts, get your passwords changed, change your account numbers, all that kind of stuff. They also recommend placing a fraud alert on your credit file, which can be done through Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion, the three big ones. So anyway, if you're an owner-operator, like I said, and you are a fleet owner and you have access to, or you have a TQL account, man, I am talking like a imbecile today. If you have a TQL account, make sure you go and figure out what you need to do about this. Link in the show notes, and read more about it. And that will do it for the news. Well, that wasn't all bad news, was it? I mean, it wasn't all death and destruction, but it wasn't exactly piles of fluffy kittens either, was it? All right, let's move on. All right, we do not have a trucker grub today. That is, well, I mentioned in the last podcast, it's because we don't have very many people submitting them, and I was debating whether to just axe the segment altogether, but quite honestly, that's not why there isn't one today. It's simply because, well, there's no place to eat. That's a little bit of both, actually. But, even if you wanted to tell somebody about a good place to eat, they couldn't really go and enjoy the experience. They'd just have to walk in and grab the food and walk back out. So anyway, we're just going to skip trucker grub this time. If you have a trucker grub in mind, what that is for new listeners who may not know, is if you have a favorite place that you like to eat that you can get a truck into, or you can get a truck close to, and you would like to tell us about it, please tell us all the gory details on it. Give us the exit number, say where you can park, the name of the place, obviously, maybe their store hours, what you like to eat there, what kind of food they have, what are the prices like, what was the service like, if there was a cool atmosphere. Just tell us about it. Just a couple of minutes, don't take long, 3 minutes max, something like that. And, helps us to, truckers, a lot of times they just don't want another Subway. So if there's something right down the road that they can go and eat that's really good, that's recommended by another trucker, then, more power to us. So anyway, there will be no trucker grub, but we do have an excellent word from our sponsor. All right, drivers. Pilot Flying J knows you're the ones keeping America moving during this challenging time. And they want to say thank you for all you do by giving you more rewards and more points. It's called Push for Points, and it can get you up to that 4-point level faster while you're racking up those hard-earned miles. That's right, you can reach 4 points per gallon after only 6 qualifying fills. Push for Points is available only in the Pilot Flying J app for a limited time only. You can find it on the App Store on your phone. It's called Pilot Flying J. Listen, this Push for Points thing is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Here's how it works. Step 1. Push the Activate button in the app at the beginning of each month. Simple. Who doesn't like to push buttons? Step 2. Fill your tank with at least 75 gallons of diesel. Easy peasy. Step 3. Sit back and watch your point balance grow faster than ever before. Hey, who doesn't like money? You'll increase your earning level after each commercial diesel fill of over 75 gallons, from 1 to 1.5 to 2 to 2.5, and so on. You'll be earning 4 points per gallon for the rest of the month after only 6 qualifying fills. And what can you do with all those points? Well, your rig's not the only thing that needs a fill up, right? When you get hungry or you need a tasty beverage, you can redeem points for in-store savings on the essentials, as well as merchandise for you and your rig. And when you pull into park for a while, you can also redeem those points for a reserved parking spot and Wi-Fi credits at participating Pilot and Flying J locations. And again, from Pilot Flying J, thank you for all you do, drivers, and stay safe on the road. See terms and conditions at pilotflyingj.com/app. And thank you to Pilot Flying J for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump. On to today's main topic, which of course is all about the coronavirus. You know, when all this was starting, I was thinking, okay, I know I've got to cover this in this month's podcast. How am I going to do it? Who am I going to talk to? I don't know any experts on this thing. Well, it turns out I didn't have to know anybody. That's because my friend JT Peters from Truck Driver Power, check out that app. There's a link in the show notes to it. And also you can just check it out in your app store. Anyway, JT does a podcast called Payload, and his most recent episode was March 16th. It's episode 9. He had an interview with Dr. Eleanor Berquist, who is a PhD epidemiologist. Did I say that right? Yeah. I said epidermatologist one night, and should have heard the evil overlord laughing at me. Anyway, an epidemiologist is an expert in infectious disease. And this was one of those interviews where I was listening along, and every time something was said, I'd say, JT, ask her this. You know, I'd be talking to my phone, and right after that, JT would ask the question. And that to me is a sign of a good interview, when the interviewer is asking the exact questions you would ask. And he asked every single question that I would have asked. So at that point, I thought, what am I doing? I can just rebroadcast the Payload podcast here. Naturally, I asked JT for permission, and he was more than happy to oblige. So I'm going to play this in its entirety, intro and everything. This will kill 2 birds with 1 stone. It will actually clue you in on, truckers, how truckers are to deal with this coronavirus, and give you some information about why everything's kind of going berserko right now. And it will also let you get a clue as to how the Payload podcast sounds. So with that, I'll just turn it over to JT, and I'll be back afterwards for a few more comments. And of course, the feedback section. Stay tuned. Here we go.
Welcome to the Payload Podcast, presented by Truck Driver Power. I'm JT Peters, CEO of Truck Driver Power, and we have a very special guest on the show today in Dr. Eleanor Berquist. She has a background that is very topical in the current times, given the spread of COVID-19. She has a PhD in public health, and her work experience includes infectious disease at both the local and CDC level. I'm not the most science-minded person, so I'll let Dr. Eleanor Berquist introduce herself and her background. In this episode, we cover her expertise and some definitions of terms and phrases we've been hearing about coronavirus outbreak. Dr. Berquist explains how this is different from a bad flu season and why this is such a big deal right now. She also provides advice on how truck drivers can keep themselves safe and manage this crisis through the lens of a driver's unique living experiences. It is worth noting that this episode was recorded on March 15th, and events are changing very rapidly. So please keep an eye out for CDC and FMCSA guidelines and or regulatory changes. And before I pass it over to Dr. Berquist, I urge you to have other truck drivers listen to this episode and share it to friends who are truckers. You will not find a better current analysis specifically for truck drivers from a better source. Enjoy the podcast, And please email contact@truckdriverpower.com if you'd like us to produce another episode with Dr. Berquist as an update should events change in the coming weeks. Thank you for keeping the economy rolling, and especially so in such challenging and uncertain times. Good luck and enjoy the Payload Podcast. Dr. Berquist, great to have you here today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, JT. I'm so happy to be here and happy to talk to people about COVID-19 and strategies that they can protect their health, because truckers are the ones that are out there for us every day, and we need to make sure that they stay on the road and stay healthy.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. With shocks to supply chain, we got to make sure that our, goods and services are being kind of supplied with everything that they need. And without truckers, we don't have any physical goods. Why don't you get started kind of giving us a little explanation of your background and some of your expertise?
Sure. So I have a PhD in public health, technically in behavioral science and health education. I also have a background in infectious disease epidemiology, which means that I've spent a long time studying how infectious disease specifically, so things like coronavirus, things like the flu, things like salmonella, how they move through people over time. So epidemiology or epidemic is basically just a long word for disease as it moves through people during a specific time frame.
Okay. Given that, and starting at maybe a very basic level, I think you went through a little bit there of, epidemiology and epidemic, but what's the difference between an epidemic and a pandemic?
Great question, JT. So an epidemic is an experience of disease that's happening at the local level, something that's happening around you or in one given place. A pandemic is an epidemic that's happening all over the world at the same time. So it's really important to realize that when we have a pandemic, it's very difficult to rely on other parts of the world because they're experiencing the same thing in the same time. So if we were having the epidemic and then 2 years later, China or Italy had their epidemic, that wouldn't really be a pandemic. But the fact that it's all happening within the space of weeks and months makes it a pandemic.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. Obviously, it makes it sound a little more severe at the same time. I think we'll get into some of the challenges that'll come from pandemics versus epidemics. But along the way, if people haven't been following this too closely, there have been some headlines that have gotten kind of out. For example, the NBA cancels their season. NHL cancels their season. March Madness cancels their season. Lots of these things have been happening all over the country. I think that's in the reaction to a lot of different elements that relate to social distancing. What does that mean?
Social distancing is when individuals who would normally come in closer physical proximity to one another decide to move further apart. So that means not shaking people's hands. I don't know if your audience has seen people doing the elbow bump lately, where instead of shaking people's hands in order to greet them, you sort of touch elbows. As we get further into the pandemic, we'll even stop doing that. We'll stop being close to people outside of our family. We'll greet with a wave or a smile, but we'll generally stay about 6 feet apart. So common consensus is basically, if you stretch your arm out and you're close enough to touch somebody, you're way too close in the pandemic. Preferably, you'd like to stretch sort of both of your arms out and stay that, if you spun around in a circle, almost that like helicopter circle around yourself would be a good social distance measure. That's on a personal level. On a greater, more community public level, you're seeing that play out because those seats in those stadiums are too close together. You might start hearing about it next for religious activities, the churches, pews, other religions. You might start seeing those things experience social distancing measures. So you've already seen it coming across in several states with schools. Different businesses are starting to discuss it in terms of telework. Obviously, for truckers, we as a country need you all on the road. We need you to deliver our goods, our services. So it's very difficult to even consider how social distancing or telework might be put into the trucking industry because we need you in the field.
Yeah, definitely. You can't telecommute in to move physical goods from point A to point B and keep our economy moving and keep the goods that we need to survive coming and showing up to our populations all over the country. As this virus spreads, I think I've heard people refer to a situation of peak virus. Can you speak a little bit to what that means? And, are we there today?
We're definitely not at peak virus today in the United States. I don't know if your listeners have seen sort of what's happening globally, but we think that maybe peak virus has occurred in China and potentially in South Korea. They haven't been reporting new numbers for a little while, so hopefully they've reached their peak virus. In the United States, we've had a lot of testing problems. We haven't been able to get the test kits out to the people who might need them. There have been some other delays. So for various reasons, we don't have a really great handle on how many people are infected in the US right now, but those tests are becoming more available, and we should have that information this week, next week, in 2 weeks, as the weeks progress. However, what that means is we likely have not hit peak virus here yet. There's lots of different things you can do, those social distancing measures, to make the peak virus slow down and not be as dramatic. I don't know if people have seen the flatten the curve meme, but the idea is if you have a really high curve of lots of cases in a short period of time, that overwhelms the healthcare system. That we don't have enough beds for it. We don't have enough ventilators for it. We don't have enough masks and, healthcare provisions for a really steep increase in a new infection. So when we try and flatten the curve, when we try and bring that down, maybe there are the same amount of infections, but they happen out over a much longer time, in which case everybody gets a bed, everybody gets treatment, everybody gets to go to the hospital, and everybody gets to see the doctor. So that's why we want to flatten the curve.
Great. That helps quantify it in a way that I haven't quite yet heard. And when I think a little bit more still yet about peak virus, does that mean that the virus is no longer spreading? Does that mean the virus is declining and there are less people getting it? What does peak virus actually mean?
Peak virus means, and it's not really, you can never know until after the epidemic is over, but peak virus means basically the day or week where we had the most new cases. So if you have 20 cases today, 30 cases tomorrow, 50 cases the next day, then 30 new cases, then 20 new cases, then 5 new cases, that day where you had 50 new cases was peak virus, that third day in. But you don't know that, until the decline of new cases starts becoming apparent in the news.
Gotcha. So peak virus really speaks to the new virus count, not necessarily the aggregate count, because the aggregate count would continue to climb just at a slower rate given that peak virus had occurred.
Yes.
Maybe given the complexities of thinking through how these different math things play out with peak and new and existing, could you explain the difference between a linear spreading virus versus a exponential spreading virus?
Sure. That gets to one of the things that makes this coronavirus or COVID-19 problem so interesting, scary, and top of mind for people. So coronavirus right now is spreading in an exponential manner. What that means is that every one person might go on to infect 2 or 3 more people. And then those 2 or 3 people would go on to infect 2 or 3 more people. So that's an exponential spread. If one person infects one person and one, if it moves like that, that's linear. So to put it another way, if you have one case today and then you add another one for a case tomorrow and there are 2, and you add another one the next day for another case, that's 3, and another one the next day for another case, that's 4. That's a linear spread. That's much easier to contain than an exponential spread, which is we have one case today, but it doubles and we have 2 cases tomorrow. When we have 2 cases, that also doubles and we have 4 cases the next day. That next day it doubles, we have 8 cases. The next day it doubles, we have 16. The next day it doubles, we have 36. So you can see the difference between having 5 cases or 32 cases. It's much bigger. And once you get into several weeks out, those numbers become much, much bigger in the hundreds of thousands, potentially the millions in April.
Wow. Definitely big numbers. But can we also kind of take a moment to cover what the mortality rates look like so far with this and what mortality rates actually mean when I think about the number of people that have it versus the number of kind of people that are still getting it every day? What is the mortality rate?
The mortality rate for COVID-19 is changing because we don't really have an idea of the base level of disease. We don't know all of those asymptomatic people or people that don't have symptoms that do indeed have the disease. And so there's a lot of people who may or may not have it and have mild symptoms or asymptomatic symptoms. And that's great. That's, we don't want people to be sick. On the other hand, those individuals spread the disease to other people who get even more sick. And so that's why you'll be seeing some of these social distancing measures happening more and more frequently in the United States. But right now, the mortality is about 1%. So COVID-19 kills about 1% of its victims, which doesn't sound like a lot, but influenza kills about 0.1%. So COVID is 10 times deadlier than the flu. That's just a really big number, especially if it moves through the population the way that we think it will.
Given that I believe some of the information about the mortality rate is that it generally seems to be applying to an older population, and that the general age of truck drivers is somewhere between 50 and 54 years old. What concerns might they have if the mortality rate looks different for that population than it might for high school age kids?
Sure. Well, first of all, when they talk about older, usually they mean 60 or 65 and above. So that's great that a lot of your trucking population will be somewhat protected by their age. That's not definitely a slam dunk. There's also underlying conditions, and there have been healthy people, a lot of the healthcare workers who are on the front lines in the hospitals. Some of them have gotten sick and died. So one of the things that would be important for that population to know, that 50 to 55, would be, of course, their older parents and protecting them, but also trying to make sure that you don't get sick from the much younger and hardier and hale people who are younger than you, because you still don't want to get sick. I mean, COVID-19, even if you don't die, you may or may not get pneumonia, and nobody wants that. It just is no fun to be sick. And also it's a tough thing to try and work while you're sick. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you just kind of touched on one element of working while you're sick. You know, there's been lots of kind of suggestions from the CDC for office people to not come to work when they're sick. Kind of what symptoms should somebody be thinking about or looking for as sick? What does sick mean? I got to assume from what I've been reading, it's more than a sniffly nose. But what are some of the symptoms that people should be mindful of?
Sure. Fever is definitely the most common occurrence with COVID-19. I think the recent statistic that I saw was that 80% of cases will have a fever associated with it. So the vast majority of cases do have a fever. Other cases will be having a cough. Some people might, as bad as that sounds, might have diarrhea, which would be a symptom you wouldn't necessarily be looking for, but is associated with this disease progression. So mostly flu-like symptoms, which is one of the things that's getting a lot of comparison is, this and the flu. But for a moment, I'd like to talk about the difference between COVID and the flu.
Sure. Yeah, let's do that, because I know there's a lot of people out there that feel upset that this is damaging our economy so severely, and they just don't understand or want to know why this is any different than just a bad flu season.
It's totally different from a bad flu season because First of all, it's happening all around the world at the same time. Usually when it's flu season in the northern part of the hemisphere and then not in the southern part of the hemisphere. And then as the southern part of the hemisphere becomes winter, it is not flu season in the northern part of the hemisphere. So that pandemic aspect happening globally all at the same time is different from flu. Also, as we covered, the mortality rate is much higher than flu. And two really big factors for why it's different than flu are that nobody has any immunity to this. We don't have a vaccine for coronavirus. So nobody, whether you wanted to get the shot or didn't, there is no shot available. Also, there's not a known treatment for coronavirus. Scientists and doctors are working really hard on it right now and trying to learn, as in the United States, everything they can from China and Italy and South Korea and their experiences so that we can figure out what drugs might work against coronavirus. But right now, flu has several antivirals that you can get a prescription for from your doctor if you have a flu positive test. For coronavirus, you don't have that option. There is not a known one singular best treatment for coronavirus. So all of those different reasons, the high mortality rate, the no vaccine, the pandemic nature of it, and then, of course, the no one known treatment make coronavirus very different from influenza.
Maybe some of these listeners haven't been paying attention to what's happening in Europe. Maybe you could explain a little bit about some of the more recent events that have occurred there. I know, for example, currently, I believe Spain has been considered by the WHO as the new epicenter, most challenged location on Earth. But I think everybody is also looking to places like Italy with some of the challenges that they're experiencing with their ventilators. So maybe could you explain just where we stand on March 15th when we look at what's happening in Europe and how that could relate to what we talk about, meaning peak virus, if that were to occur on a pandemic level, the same way in the United States of America?
Sure. Europe's slightly different in that they all have their own unique borders and country. However, because of the European Union, everything is much more free-flowing than it once was. So that globalization, that's great for the trucking industry and great for those of us who want goods and services moved quickly across lines, is also, unfortunately, good for viruses from the virus perspective. So the virus has been able to spread really easily through Europe, and we can look at that and hopefully learn from it because we have the same thing here in the United States. We have those porous borders through states. All the states are allowed to do things differently, yet the interstates, all the roads run right through them. Again, great for the trucking industry, great for those of us who rely so heavily on all of you to bring us what we need. We thank you. But it's also great for the virus to just move right across all those borders. So in looking at Spain becoming the next epicenter in Europe, we can see the same thing happening in the United States. So they're not that close together, but you had Seattle in the beginning being sort of the bellwether or the canary in the coal mine for the United States. And then it hopped over to New York with New Rochelle. You've got San Francisco also becoming a hot spot. And then we'll see more and more by next week. You'll probably have Denver, potentially Florida, and then ones I'm not even up on. So it's that exponential spread that you'll just see more and more cases start to happen in the next few weeks. However, those social distancing measures that we're putting into place right now are going to work their magic, hopefully, but not for a long time. They won't work their magic unless everybody participates in them and we adhere to them for at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks. It'll feel like a long time.
One of the things that you kind of referenced briefly, I think you said that the count could get to 1 million, 1.5 million, something like that, maybe sometime in April. But are there other numbers that can help quantify this, maybe on any kind of a relative basis as to where we stand against other countries in the world right now? And kind of, I guess, just how would we think about that, recognizing that we're, again, recording this on March 15th, 2020. So a lot can change every given day as this kind of evolves and more testing comes to light.
I think it's such a great question, JT. It's so difficult to think about this. It's a really big concept. To me, this whole idea is almost like thinking about black holes and outer space. It's so hard for me to get my mind around sometimes to think about what would it look like next week or in 2 weeks, because it's changing minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. And so it's really hard to even think about next week or in 2 weeks. However, just saying that, I saw a great chart on LinkedIn about how far different countries are behind Italy. So it said France, and this is as of today, March 15th, this one modeler said that France and Spain are about 8 days behind Italy. Because of our testing problems here in the US, we are about 11 days behind Italy. So we're going to come up faster than France and Spain, probably in the next week. And you'll see a lot of cases. And then certainly by that first week in April, we will, I hope we aren't, but potentially be one of the main hotspots globally for the virus.
Well, certainly an evolving process as more data comes in and we get more understanding of the current state versus, versus the historical state, which at this point doesn't seem to do us a ton of good as we're still so lacking in data and information. But with the information that we do have and knowing what the CDC has put out, washing your hands, using hand sanitizer, maybe can you think and talk about a few of the different things that if you were a trucker living out in America that you can do at the very base level to kind of keep yourself safe, but of course keep your other, your peers and fellow, people in the industry safe as you go about your day, kind of making this in some form a team sport where if, everybody were to do the right thing, it really helps contain and keep everybody else safe.
You bet. I'm very concerned with keeping truckers safe. I think I've said it several times, but we all rely on the truckers to get the things that we need, whether that's hand sanitizer or masks or toilet papers, or food. That stuff comes on trucks. That stuff doesn't just fly in on an airplane. Maybe it flies in on an airplane, but then it comes to my house, my Walmart, my grocery store on a truck. So truckers protecting themselves is a really important topic. There's several different ways. That social distancing that we've talked about and people have been seeing in the news. Also, it's possible to get either tissues with water or Clorox wipes, different things. So when you go into a truck stop or something and you see certain surfaces that look like they've been touched a lot, you can just give that a quick wipe. If you're going to sit in the lounge, bring one of the Clorox wipes and just wipe down the chair that you're about to sit in. And then, feel free, sit there, relax, you deserve it. Other things that you might want to consider would be buying your own container of liquid soap. What if you go into the bathroom at whatever place that you're stopping at and they don't have soap? I know it sounds a little ridiculous to bring your soap in with you, but keeping abreast of your own health is so important. And washing your hands is the top way to keep yourself safe. So hand sanitizer is great, but a coronavirus is enveloped in a lipid membrane that reacts very, very badly to soap. So coronavirus is like number one enemy would probably be soap. So we don't have a treatment, but we do have soap. So again, hand sanitizer is great. You can grab a bottle of that and just, sort of rub it on your hands before you go into a specific place. Certainly when you come out of a place, before you get back in your cab and touch all of your things, your radio, your door handles, your steering wheel, you want to make sure that you're protected when you get back in your cab. So Purell or, hand sanitizer, soap right before you get back in and you touch your space so you make sure your space is really safe. And again, all of this sounds today or in the next week like overkill, but we've all heard it before. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's so much easier to look silly for a few weeks carrying around a bottle of liquid soap than to have pneumonia. It's a very easy choice for most people.
When I grew up, I remember being told by my parents to cover your mouth when you cough. I believe people are clearly still told to cover their mouths, but I believe now they're telling them not to do it with their hands and to do something kind of like a vampire cough or into their elbows. Can you explain a little bit about kind of what that is and kind of how that matters?
Sure. It's important to cough into your sleeve. So pulling your elbow up when you feel like you're going to cough and sort of putting that over, even if it's your bare arm, that's better than coughing into your hand. If you're wearing a short sleeve t-shirt, it's better to cough onto your arm than into your hands or into the environment. So pulling up your arm and coughing either into your sleeve or into your arm is great. Another thing that's great, if you feel like that's not an option for you, you can pull up your shirt from your neck and cough down into your shirt, almost like a bandana or a face mask. You could just cough down there and then be done with it. It's important because this is a droplet spread virus. And so what that means is that viral particles are in the saliva, in your, and also in your nose. So when you're sneezing and when you cough or sneeze, there's a spray associated with that. It sounds gross, but it's true. So we use social distancing and washing our hands and covering our coughs to protect ourselves and others and limit the spread. So pushing down that curve again. So availability of many of the products that normal civilians in America are able to access at their local grocers or pharmacies are not always readily available to truck drivers at truck stops. They do have access on occasion to Walmarts because of their large parking lots and other places like Home Depot and Lowe's. What kind of things, if a truck driver were thinking about kind of stocking up to the best of their abilities, let's say maybe in a cooler or a duffel bag, what are some of the essential items that you would encourage them to stock up on if for some reason they need to spend a considerable amount of time parked somewhere in the country in the cab of their truck? Sure. That's a great question, a very forward-thinking question, JT. And first of all, I'd like to talk about something that nobody really talks about with relation to pandemic preparedness, and that's money. None of us are made of money. So it always hurts my heart a little bit when you hear about pandemic preparedness and they always talk about people getting 2 weeks worth of supplies. Well, 2 weeks worth of supplies is sometimes out of reach for many people. Some people are just trying to get this week's worth of supplies, much less this week and 2 other weeks. So I would encourage people to buy things that they like, that they find, that they want to eat. And have with them is most important and non-perishable versions of those things that fit within their budget. So there's no need to go out and buy a ridiculous amount of something that you would never eat on a regular day because that's not something you're going to enjoy. For example, this might sound silly, but if you like raisins or dried fruit or dried meat, dried jerky, whatever it is, maybe trail mix, think about things that you kind of enjoy eating or snacking on that would keep. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a can of beans or something else that you would not want to open a can of beans and eat beans with a spoon out of your truck cab. Try and think of things that, again, are within your budget, but also are within your eating profile. What are things that you enjoy? And then put those in your cab, put those in your cooler, and try and get those type of foodstuffs because we're all going to need a lot of comfort and to protect, our mental health in terms of if things get worse, you want to eat the things you're used to. You want to find some comfort there to the best of your ability.
There's been some conversation around medicines and making sure that you have ample supply of your medicines. Can you explain a little bit about why that might be? I don't know if that comes from a shortage concern or if that comes from a concern of walking into the store just to get your medicines. Why are people in many cases being encouraged to kind of stockpile or get enough of their kind of necessity medicines, in this kind of a situation?
It's always best practice to have as much or as many medication refills as your insurance will allow. Some people don't have insurance, and in which case that might be a little bit of a different story for them. However, if you do have insurance and your insurance allows you to have one extra month, it's a good idea at all times to, sort of fill as your budget allows, fill your necessary medications as forward as you can, because you never know what might happen. It's sort of best practice for emergency preparedness in general. But in the case of the pandemic, there's a lot of different reasons why that advice is really good for now. So number one, who knows if your pharmacy chain is going to have financial problems and they will have to close for an indeterminate amount of time. Who knows whether or not the medications, there will be a run on the medications the way there was with toilet paper and they may or may not be available. Who knows if the manufacturer will have problems and they won't be able to get the medications out through you all, the truckers, to the retailers and the pharmacies in an appropriate amount of time. There's just many different ways that the supply chain for medication specifically can be interrupted. But what's important about that is that people need their medications. They're just an essential thing for daily life, whereas you really don't want to wait any more than a few days on your necessary medications. Whereas if you don't have whatever widget that you want to have, you can wait a few days on those items. But medications are very necessary every day for your health.
I've noticed that some people have referred to a good practice for beating or fighting the coronavirus, if you get it, is to be in good shape, exercise, and sleep well. Given that nobody can maybe flip the switch and drop a quick 20 to 30 pounds just by working out in a given day or two, can you speak to if there's any truth to that and how important might sleep be if that's also true?
So there are so many things that truckers can do to help themselves stay healthy and stay safe. In addition to social distancing and washing your hands, there are those general health things that are helpful. They're helpful every day, not just in a pandemic, but your body is just much more able to fight disease if you're able to sleep well and also stay on top of your mental health. So that means just staying positive where you can, staying on top of the isolation that social distancing may or may not bring. And in one way, the truckers are way on top of this and ahead of the game. Really, the United States, the rest of us, the citizens, should be looking to the truckers to say, hey, how do you deal with these long haul days? How do you deal with many hours on your own, just really talking to people with your voice without that physical, visual interaction? Do you have any strategies for us? So in many ways, the truckers are really well prepared in a way that the rest of us aren't.
So that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about how we as a society could learn a lot more from truckers. And I think that we should find a way to kind of try and elevate some of those tactics. Good point. In the interim, where are some places that truckers can actually go to read more about this if they wanted to? Other great resources they should maybe look into for their own health.
Obviously, the CDC, I believe it's cdc.gov, has the most up-to-date information about whatever regulations, whatever travel advisories, restrictions, different things that the government has decided are best practice for the U.S. So cdc.gov is a great place. Also, I know a lot of websites, news websites like the New York Times, I don't know if the Washington Post has done it, but a lot of places have dropped their paywalls for coronavirus news, breaking news. I know CNN has a website in terms of staying up on it. You can also check with, given, research institutions. Johns Hopkins has a beautiful map tracking the spread of coronavirus globally, not just in the United States. It updates every so often with new cases around the world. So there's various places, again, CDC, the news websites that have dropped their paywalls, the Johns Hopkins University map, where people can go to find out more. Also, wherever your home base is, that local health department has a lot of information. I would just like to say one more thing, that if you're feeling unwell, it's important that if you think you have a fever, hopefully you have a thermometer and you're able to take your temperature. And if you have a fever, since it is one of the main symptoms of COVID-19, to then call your local home-based health department and see where you can get a test. If you are not in the jurisdiction where you live, you can call them and they will direct you, hopefully, to the local health department of wherever you and your truck are at that time, so you can find the closest testing site. Because driving sick is no fun. It's not something that we want for you as the people that bring us all of our goods and services. So staying healthy and then getting the treatment or the care that you need if you are sick is of paramount importance to us, the citizens of the United States, that you stay healthy and stay on the road.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much, Dr. Bergquist. And I will say all of the links that we were directly referenced there, the CDC and the Johns Hopkins website and the map, I will include in the show notes if anybody'd like to do that. Well, I think I'm all out of questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Bergquist, for being with us today. I hope that the audience enjoyed learning a little bit more. I personally was, very well educated on the matter. And I appreciate your taking the time to join us. Thank you very much, Dr. Bergquist.
You're welcome. And I'd like to say again, thank you to all of the truckers who do so much for all of us all the time, not just in the pandemic, but every day of our lives in the U.S.
And with that note, I also will agree and say thank you to all the truckers that are out there keeping the economy rolling every day of every month. Well, that's all we have for this episode of the Payload Podcast. It was brought together pretty quick and maybe pretty dirty, but we hope the information was helpful and insightful, period. As always, we want to hear from you. So please feel free to email us at contact@truckdriverpower.com. We're happy to make another quick episode if this was an interesting set of content with Dr. Bergquist. In the show notes, of course, you will find links and content and ways to find the information that was discussed in the podcast. Please do let us know what you think and if there's other guests you'd like us to have on the show. We're on lots of different social networks, and our social network handles will be noted in the show notes. Our handles are @truckdriverpower with no E on the end. And feel free, of course, to email us at contact@truckdriverpower.com. I'm JT Peters, CEO of Truck Driver Power, and I appreciate you listening today. As always, be safe, be well, and I hope those four-wheelers stay off your grill.
Well, I hope you got as much out of that interview as I did. Lots of good information there, but boy, one thing that's really brought home to me is that things are just constantly changing. Like JT said, they recorded that on March the 15th. And now, well, I just reported some numbers from late March, March 28th the other day, and I looked again, and those numbers have changed already again. I had reported that there were 664,000 cases worldwide, and just within a few days it had jumped up to 853, and then now I looked again today, and it's 720,000. Deaths are still about the same, rising slowly, thankfully just a little bit slower. But anyway, just keep an eye on this. It looks like not only is Italy a hotspot, but so is Spain right now. Anyway, there's no way I can possibly keep up with this on this podcast. So go to a better source. This Worldometers, Johns Hopkins has a really good map. If I remember, I'll put the link in the show notes to that too. If not, just look up Johns Hopkins coronavirus, and they've got a good map of how it's spreading. So anyway, thanks to JT Peters and Dr. Eleanor Bergquist for that great information. If you're interested in that kind of content, which is pretty awesome, go over and check out the Payload Podcast. There'll be a link in the show notes, or just search for Payload Podcast in your favorite podcast app.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
All right, enough of the coronavirus. Let's get on with some listener feedback. I was getting low last time. I recall shouting out and asking for some audio comments, and I got some, so I appreciate that. First up, we're going to hear from our old friend Greg. Greg used to send audio comments, but he stopped for some reason. Greg, what's up with that? Actually, I know why in this one, because he sent me pictures, of some pots and pans. Yes. Yes, this is trucker dump worthy. He writes, you talk about being cheap. Well, I always talk about being cheap, Greg. That's my thing. He says, this is my way of cooking in the truck. The pans are over 20 years old. I started cooking in the truck using a folding sterno camp stove. I currently use an electric hot plate and the pictured microwave. So being cheap, I don't eat out much. Hell, neither do I, although I eat out a little bit more now on this job than I did in the past. Anyway, he continues on. I used to use a crock pot a bunch when I was teaming with the queen bitch of the universe. That's from the Abyss movie. Guess I have the evil overlord. He has the queen bitch of the universe. Anyway, he says, I still have the crock pot, but I don't use it much anymore. I thought you'd enjoy this. Well, I did enjoy it. I looked at those pans that he sent me, and they look like some weird handles. And this is going to turn out kind of good, because if you like to cook in the truck, this is a good thing. I'm going to try to include a link in the show notes to these pots and pans. They're made for camping. So these handles like fold up kind of around the sides of it, but you can pull them out and they act as a handle. So they store nice and easy. This is a stainless steel set of pots and pans for just like $32. So if you're interested in starting to cook inside your truck, and that's probably advisable nowadays with the coronavirus and everything, to do some more of your own cooking. Hey, I'll put a link in the show notes to this. And thanks, Greg, for sending this in. Next up, let's hear from Scott. I'm going to try this name again. We'll see how it goes. Franciscovich. Could be close to that. Could be not. Let me know, Scott. I actually ran into Scott before and he told me how to pronounce it, but of course I didn't remember. Sorry, Scott. Anyway, he goes by LTL Scott in our Slack group. If you want to talk to him over there, join the Slack groups. If you're interested in joining that Slack group, just go to abouttruckdriving.com/contact, and all the links and everything are in there. Anyway, Scott writes, hey, brother, figure I'd chime in on a couple things. Really enjoyed the last episode, the one on expedited trucking. It gave great insight and information to the subject. I know I always had a hard time getting any information on those types of jobs. Now, after hearing the interview, no thanks. Too much Wild West for my liking. It's kind of the feeling I got about it too, Scott. He goes on. Now, on a personal note, on some of Trucker Dump 140 and the feedback on Trucker Dump 142, we all know what I'm referring to. Let's not even acknowledge that type of ugliness. Yes, the type of ugliness he's talking about is the tailgating comments I got and the vile filth that came from a couple of people. He goes on. He says, we have enough stress doing this job to have to listen to something which is born of utter ignorance. Very few people have the capacity to consider the job we do and how their actions affect us. Trucks are viewed as obstacles to be overcome, avoided, beaten. Rant over. Sorry, I tried to keep it civil. Well, Scott, you kept it perfectly civil. So, hey, I'd like to get your opinion on this subject. Do you agree with Scott? Should I give people like this time of day on my podcast or not? My thought process is that I want to give everybody a chance to speak up. And, hey, if you agree with me or you disagree with me, I figure both of you have an equal opportunity to, put your feelings out there. So is it worth it? That was kind of vile to be on the show, quite honestly, and it was uncomfortable, but I'm just trying to give everybody kind of equal opportunity here. So what are your thoughts on that? Email me at truckerdump@gmail.com and let me know. But thanks for the email, Scott, and I'll see you out on the road somewhere, I'm sure. Hey, next up, we're going to hear from new listener Rico, and I will just let you hear from him personally.
Hey, Todd. My name is Rico, and I've been listening to your podcast starting 3 weeks ago from today's date, from the first episode. Went online. I was listening to other different podcasts that had nothing to do with trucking, and then I'm like, man, there got to be one out there for trucking, and yours had the best review or reviews from other listeners, so I gave it a try, and been listening to it ever since. I just made up to episode 139, so I'm, going to continue listening to the rest of them and the upcoming ones that you're coming out with.
Hey, let me take a second break in here. First off, Rico, I'm glad you're enjoying the podcast. Must be kind of weird listening from the very beginning all the way up, because I know I've gotten better over the years. The podcasts have gotten much, much, much longer, much, much longer. I think my first one was like 5 minutes or something like that. And now they're, 2 hours plus. But anyway, I wanted to take just a second here to stress to you something that Rico said. He said he downloaded the podcast because he read the reviews and the reviews were the best. Now, I don't ask for reviews very often, but as you can see, they do really help. So if you have been listening to the podcast for a long time and you have never bothered to give a review on the show and give a rating for it, please do so. There is a link in the show notes. Just look inside your podcast app. It's all the way at the very bottom. It just says something like, if you have a second to rate or review the podcast, please do so. And you can click on that, just tap on that and go directly there and leave a rating or review. And again, I would appreciate it. I try not to push the whole review thing all that often, but every once in a while, kind of like PBS, just every once in a while, go for the fundraiser. All right, let's get back to Rico.
But I've been driving since 2013, and as a company driver, then switched over to owner op 3 years into it, and then kind of gave up on that, went back to a company driver. Yeah, I wanted to respond to an email that you read from a non-trucker. I guess it was a regular motorist on a highway. He had mentioned something about 70. I know he had it wrong. Somewhere around that area. The only thing that came to mind why truckers were on him, like tailgating him right behind him, is that he simply had to be on the left lane. If you're on the left lane, going below the posted speed limit, I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Some people don't realize that the left lane is a passing lane or the fast lane. So that's the only thing that came in mind. And, if he was on the right lane and there were truckers like still on him, then that, that can be an issue. I'd be like, that's common on the left lane, on the passing lane. So that's the only thing I can think of that he was being tailgated. He had to be on the left lane going slow. But, all right, man. And the fellow, trucker dumpers, stay out of my way.
Hey, Rico, that's my line. Oh, that's awesome. I do remember this email. I don't remember all of the details about this particular tailgating. I know there have been people write in saying they were in the left-hand lane and they were getting tailgated when they were going 70 mile an hour. And yes, that stinks. And they have every right to go 70 mile an hour. I understand that if the speed limit is 70 mile an hour and a truck should not be rear-ending them. Not rear-ending them, tailgating them. Hopefully not rear-ending them. But anyway, it's like what I said before. I just don't understand why anybody would want to be tailgated by a trucker just to be stubborn. If a trucker's going to tailgate you, just get out of the way. Personally, I don't want a truck riding up on the back end of my Honda CR-V. I just don't want that happening. So I'm going to get out of their way. If they've got things to do, they got things to do. But that isn't the way our world works. Our world works that we are the most important thing on the road and everyone else should bow and submit to our will. So until that changes, we are stuck with selfish people out here. But, if they were in the right lane, I do remember one particular email saying they were in the right lane because I remember responding to them and asking them, are you sure you were in the right lane, not the left lane? And they assured me they were in the left lane or the right lane being tailgated like right up on their grill. And they just end up taking an exit to get out of their way, which is the right response. But you said there's no other reason for a truck to tailgate a car unless, they were in the right lane. And I am not convinced of that because as we all know, there's a lot of a-hole truckers out here that they will tailgate for no reason whatsoever. So I'm not going to go so far as there's no reason, but I get the gist of your point there. But anyway, thank you, Rico, for writing in. I appreciate it. I love the fact that you're a new listener and you've already sent an audio comment. You listened, you heard that I love audio comments, and I hope you, the listener, appreciates these audio comments too, because it's, somebody's voice other than mine, which in this particular case with this episode, you got to hear from JT Peters and Eleanor Bergquist. You got to hear their voices for a while. So, man, it's been like a vacation for you. You haven't had to listen to my voice the whole episode. Anyway, Rico did follow up with me after I thanked him for the audio comment. He says, I don't know if you started the new episode yet, but the coronavirus may be the best topic around this time. Yeah. Yep. You pegged that one for sure. He says, I'm from Pennsylvania and noticed that our governor, Tom Wolf, had shut down all the rest areas, and that is affecting the truck parking for over-the-road drivers. Yeah, he did that, and then it got quickly reversed. He was opening some back up because, we talked about that earlier in the podcast. So you're all over it, man. Anyway, he goes on and says, not just that, but for some odd reason, I took notice that the state troopers had set up speed traps all over I-81 and I-80 in intervals of 5, 10, and 20 miles. He says, I found that to be awkward, especially during this crisis, because it was not like that 3 or 4 days ago. Who knows? He says, it is nuts out here, and I can imagine how much worse it can get. I support you to the fullest and heard that episode where people had comments on tailgating and their negative views. They need to respect more and be more open-minded without all the swearing and bad-mouthing. Agree. Totally agree. He says, I agree with your views 100% and understand your opinions on those kinds of subjects. And don't worry about responding back late. Oh, yeah, I did respond back really, really late. I'm so awful at email. He says, I can imagine how many emails you get from listeners and how much time consuming the trucking industry can be. Rico, there's really no excuse for it. Email isn't really that hard, but I have a hard time sometimes. I think what I do is I will often, flag something to respond to later, and then I just forget to respond to it, which is not cool because, you've taken the time to send me an email and, send in this particular sense, send me an audio comment. And I don't know. I'm a horrible person. What can I say? Everybody quit listening. No, don't. Please don't. I'm kidding. Anyway, Rico, again, I thank you for writing in, and I especially thank you for that audio comment. Now let's finish up with Zachary. He writes in and basically apologizes for the bad audio quality. And I got to tell you, it was pretty bad. It was pretty loud. What you're going to hear is a filtered version and not the best I could get it. This is why I always advise that if you're going to send an audio comment, of course, I appreciate it, but please pull over to the side of the road and, turn your truck off. It will only take 2 or 3 minutes to record it. And, you'll get much, much better sound quality. But anyway, I appreciate all audio comments, so I'm certainly not leaving it out, as Zachary suggested. He was like, this is such bad audio quality, you probably shouldn't even play it on the show. But hey, that ain't the way I roll. You write me an audio comment or send me an audio comment, and it's going on the show. So take it away, Zachary.
Hey, Todd, how are you today? Hope you're doing good. Sitting here listening to your episode, decided to pause halfway through so I didn't forget to send you an audio comment. It's funny that you was talking about the driver's license deal. Before you said pull it out and look at it, I started thinking, when does mine expire? I started pulling my wallet out before you said to check my driver's license. Luckily, mine don't expire for next year, so I'm good there.
Awesome.
Listening to your section right now about the 18 and younger drivers, or under 21 to 18, I like the idea. Actually, I was one. I grew up around trucks. I was able to drive them at a young age. Mom taught me. By the time I was 14, 15, I actually was driving down the highway at night with no see who was driving the truck. 18, I went and got my CDL and I ran in-state Texas, which is a bigger state than most states are, of course, so it didn't bother me for what type of business my uncle had. I was able to run back and forth to the grass farm and haul grass every night, so I was happy and did what I wanted to do on the weekends, and even afternoons during the school year was I would go down and help him after the evenings if he needed to haul or do whatever. I actually took the 18 to school a couple of times. I don't think anyone and everyone needs to do it. I do think there needs to be some training involved. I don't like the training that most of the mega fleets do, where they add a driver and a trainer together and make them run as a team. How do you get trained as you're sleeping, or how do you supposed to be training as you're back there sleeping? That's
great point.
I think that means someone's in that passenger seat the whole time doing the training. That truck needs to be a drive 11, sleeper 10, drive 11. Not this team operation that most trainers go through nowadays. That's my audio input right now, and hope the sound quality turns out good. I'm flying down the highway at 75 miles an hour in my big old Peterbilt I drive. Have a good day.
Well, back at you, Zachary. Hope you're having a good day. It's funny you mentioned the whole team trucking training thing and how bad it is. And I have said that numerous times. I totally agree with you. It's funny, though, because there's a story that just came out just yesterday or the day before. I can't remember. Man, I got to tell you, this COVID stuff is coming out so fast and furious with all this news and things that I just can't keep up. It usually takes me like 3 or 4 days, once I finally record the podcast and then to get it edited and get it published and everything. And in those 3 or 4 days, news just keeps coming out and I can't keep up with it. At some point, I just have to draw the line and publish. And if I'm a little behind, well, hey, I'm a month behind anyway, so it really doesn't matter. But anyway, the news story I was talking about was that there was a story that just came out that said the FMCSA is waiving drivers with learner's permits so that they will be able to drive with a trainer, but when the trainer is back in the bunk. Now, okay. And I'm assuming this is just for the emergency, for the COVID thing. But it's an interesting thing. I mean, the learner's permit, and I don't know if you know this, but with a learner's permit, there always there's always supposed to be a licensed driver sitting in the passenger seat at the time. I think what you were actually talking about was actual training once you have your official CDL, but you're not a fully qualified truck driver yet. And they've always been able to team if they want to. And like you say, that gets abused way too often. But now, hey, we're lifting it for the learner's permits. So I guess in theory, if a trainer is dumb enough to put a learner's permit driver in the seat and let him have at it while he goes in the back and takes a nap, well, talk about a death wish. He doesn't even need COVID-19. He's got a death wish already. So anyway, Zachary, thank you for the audio comment. It was a little rough, but hey, we got through it, and I do appreciate it. So hey, thanks to Greg, Scott, Rico, and Zachary for all of the email. I appreciate it. If you have comments, suggestions, questions about anything on a past episode or just anything you have an interest in, please feel free to write me. That's truckerdump@gmail.com. Of course, you can also find all my contact information at abouttruckdriving.com/contact. Well, I guess we ought to wrap this thing up. 2020's turned out to be a pretty crappy year so far. The COVID thing, lots of people got laid off at my company. Trucking's kind of booming in certain areas. It's reducing in other areas. It's just not been great. Let's hope this year gets better. As for you, please just stay safe. Do all the guidelines. I know even if you're one of those people who thinks this thing is being way overblown, please just abide by the guidelines. If you have a stay-at-home order, please do so until this thing is over. The more we do this social distancing and isolate ourselves from other people, then the better we are. Now, as truckers, we don't have that option a lot, but do what you can, wash your hands a lot. We've all seen these truckers walk out of the bathroom without washing their hands after they've been sitting on the commode, and that's not cool. Never has been, but it's especially important now that you wash your hands constantly. Get that hand sanitizer if you can find any at the store, and, use that often. We just don't want these cooties going around any more than they have to. So for now, let's just leave this episode, and I'm going to give you the best advice you've probably heard anywhere about not spreading the COVID-19 virus. And that advice is don't lick strangers on the face. All right, let's get out of here. Stay safe and healthy. So I know we're all sick of hearing about this cursed coronavirus, but that's not going to stop me from asking you to tell me how all this is affecting your ability to do your job. I'm sure there's issues you over-the-road drivers are facing that I'm not as an LTL driver. You can reach out via email, Twitter, or join the Slack and or Facebook groups. Links to everything can be found at abouttruckdriving.com/contact. And let me put out a second request for ratings and reviews for the show. The direct link to do so is the last line in the show notes, which can be found in your podcast app or at abouttruckdriving.com by searching for TD143. As always, thanks for listening and staying subscribed. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. Don't mess with the bull, Rico. Trucker dump. Trucker dump. And thanks to Pilot Flying J for... And thanks to Pilot Flying J for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump and offers. And thanks to Pilot Flying J for offering. And thanks to Pilot Flying J for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump and for offering, what the heck? Now, I don't know if you've been made. Now, I don't know if you've been away. Now, I don't know if you've been. When you get hungry or need a tasty beverage, you can read it. When you get hungry or need a tasty drink, you can read. When you get hungry or you need a tasty drink, you can redeem. When you get hungry or you need a tasty drink, you can redeem. What the hell? When you get hungry, you can redeem a tasty. When you get hungry. When you get hungry or you need a tasty drink, you can redeem points for in-store savings on the essentials, as well as when you get hungry or you need a tasty drink, you can redeem those points for in-store. When you get hungry or you need a tasty beverage, you can drink. Beverage is a bad word. Well, I hope you found that as not entertaining. That's bad news. Not entertaining. What am I thinking? Oh, and I should point out. And I should point out also that you will still get a stimulus pack. Ugh, burping up Nathan's hot dogs. Ugh. All right.